Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns. We've got a beauty of a podcast for you this week and next week, as we're going to split this up over 2 weeks because it's such a massive thing. But let me introduce us before we get into the films. My name is Alan. Over there is my usual partner, Sol Harris.
Hi.
Thank you. And
joining us
did
you want me to say, come with me if you want to live or something?
No, that's fine. Yeah, okay.
I'll be back. I know now why you cry. There, use that one.
And with us, as occasionally, is Gareth Allen.
Old but not obsolete.
Yes, very good. So, some of you may have worked out from those quotes, or indeed by looking at the title of the episode you clicked on, that this is part one of a two-part look at the Terminator franchise. And this is one of the big gaps in our podcast history, isn't it? Terminator. How's it taken us 3 years to do the Terminator?
Well, I think more than anything, we were waiting for him to make this bloody new one.
Yeah.
To curl out a new sequel.
Yeah. And it is James Cameron pulling this new one together, and he is notorious for dragging his heels. Yeah. So don't blame us.
This week we're going to look at Terminator 1 and 2, aka the good Terminators, and then next week we'll be looking at 3, 4 and 5, which are the not so good ones.
I thought we were doing 1, 2, 3 because they're kind of a trilogy, and then we were going to do the second. There's 2 Terminator trilogies, Alan. There's the Terminator trilogy, and then there's another trilogy of films that were supposed to launch their own trilogies, but the trilogies got aborted because the films were so shit.
I like the idea of talking about the good ones and then contrasting it with the others.
I would prefer to do that way.
All right, well, let's do that
then. Okay, so I guess we can jump straight in with 1984's The Terminator. Bit of background. It's James Cameron's project here. Of course, a young director at that point, unproven to some respect. What was he made before? Was it the Piranha film he made before?
Piranha 2, and even that is contentious as to whether or not it really counts.
Have either of you seen Piranha 2? Because I haven't.
I haven't, actually. It's the one James Cameron film I haven't done.
I don't think I have either, no.
Well, we're all being very dismissive about Piranha 2, The Spawning, but, it might be a hidden gem.
You're right. You're right, yeah. This film was really a low-budget little throwaway project, I think, that someone was putting together, and it's become a huge thing.
He wrote the screenplay. They said, "This is dynamite, James. This is fantastic." And they offered him a lot of money for it, and he said, "Sure, but I want to direct." And they were like, "Oh, all right, well, you can do that, but we'll give you like a 20th of the money for it." And he went, all right.
Well, I'm curious about where this sits, because I imagined that this was just an Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle. If you look at his films, he's got the Conan films that have just happened, and Red Sonja and Commando. Yeah. And all of those films are very much Arnie just doing the Arnie thing, and they're all pretty forgettable. And sort of their time. Yeah. And it seems odd that the Terminator persists, that it's survived in this way. I don't think at the time that would have been expected. I think they probably just thought it was another Arnold Schwarzenegger film to knock out.
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger was not a huge star. We can put some money in this and bank on the box office. Certainly not. He was a big muscly guy who played big muscly guys who can't speak English. Do you know anything about the background of this film, Sol? Because I don't want to.
I do know the story that James Cameron allegedly had a dream of like a big robot hand reaching out from the flames, and wrote the film backwards to accommodate that shot. But beyond that, I have no idea. And I must say, conceptually, I think this film is an absolute stroke of genius. It's this big story that they're telling, but they've, found a way to kind of bring it back to something relatable, relatively low budget, and more grounded as a result.
But it's a chase movie, isn't it? It's you're being chased by the evil incarnate.
Slasher film, yeah.
It reminded me of Halloween, rewatching this first one. Especially now that Linda Hamilton's coming back for the new one that's apparently retconning all the shit sequels.
Well, when this came out, I remember everyone said that it was supposed to be a remake of Westworld.
Oh yeah,
with Yul Brynner, and I don't mean the Westworld, the recent HBO series, but the original film.
Forgot about
and I have seen that film, but not for a very long time. And it is basically he's a cowboy instead of a robot, but he's basically this unkillable, unstoppable machine that will chase you until you are dead. And I think. I don't know how intimate James Cameron was with the story of Westworld, but it does follow the same beats.
Yeah, not as much as Jurassic Park though.
He's got this script. I believe Gail Ann Hurd was the producer who kind of took it on. She's a credited co-writer, although James Cameron suggests she didn't add anything to the script. But and she's not a writer on the other films they did together. But they did eventually get married, so obviously they worked well together. And then they got divorced, so obviously it didn't work that well.
He's had a lot of wives, hasn't he?
He likes to marry producers, doesn't he?
Didn't he marry Linda Hamilton?
He did. I think he seems to really like square-jawed women. He's definitely got a type. How many wives has he had? Is it just those two and Catherine Bigelow, or are there other ones I don't know about?
There's two others, yeah. Originally they were trying to get Arnold Schwarzenegger to play Kyle Reese.
Yeah, they wanted O.J. Simpson, didn't they, as the Terminator?
Yes.
And they said, he's too friendly. He could never kill anyone. That's not believable.
But yeah, so the problem being that Schwarzenegger was so big that you need to find someone bigger to play the killing robot machine. Also, that whole doesn't speak English very well thing. So, somehow along the lines they managed to finagle it so that he got Schwarzenegger as the Terminator, which now, in retrospect, obviously seems like a totally genius idea. Pretty much a career-making role for Schwarzenegger. He had already done Conan and Red Sonja. It was around this time, and Hercules in New York and all that sort of thing. But it changed him from this kind of little he can play the muscle guy to complete Hollywood A-lister action star.
I was really worried. I've joined you for these podcasts recently. We've done the Rambo films and we did the Beverly Hills Cop films. And they were films I loved, and having watched them again, you've sort of ruined them for me. but I'm happy to say that this film held up. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I guess I've seen this film quite a few times over the years. It wasn't like a total I haven't seen this for 20 years sort of experience for me, but it's definitely showing its age now, put it that way. And it was low budget at the time, so it's not like it was at the cutting edge of 1984 anyway. So, but I think when I watch it, I kind of take that into account and see it with that in mind. And I think they do an excellent job with what they've got.
Yeah. Well, I watched this with a 13-year-old boy, with my son, and he was. We'll get too far ahead, but where there's some special effects where he was a little bit giggly. Yeah. But generally speaking, he was impressed with it. The stop motion with the metal Terminator. He said that was very impressive. So for 1984, I think they did a good job, especially on such a low budget.
I genuinely cannot remember when I last watched these films.
So it's a while then.
Yeah. It really has been a long time. I mean, God, with regards to the third one onwards, I think it was a case of in the cinema and never again. But yeah, the first two, it's been so long, I could barely remember them. It's weird, isn't it? Because I like them.
So when you came back to watching this again, how did it go? How was it?
Basically, I remembered loads of stuff from it that was actually from the second film. That's pretty much...
Okay.
Like the bit where they appear in time balls at the start. I was remembering that as it happens in the second one. When Arnie goes and goes, I like your clothes, or whatever it is.
I need your clothes, your boots, your motorcycle.
Your clothes, your boots, your motorcycle.
That's it. I remembered him doing the bit from the second one. I remembered him going, I need your boots, your clothes, and your motorcycle. But he doesn't say that in the first one. It was a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, I had the same experience, Sol. And we talked about this in Rambo, didn't we, as well? You kind of, your memories of it are of that sort of the bigger sequel rather than the quieter original. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's definitely, I had the same experience. Those sort of those cliches. I think they're more Terminator 2 than Terminator 1.
So let's get into the actual film itself.
There's a little flash forward at the start, isn't there, where we see that sort of shonky model in a car being thrown around, and the machines killing everybody.
Yeah.
Oh right, yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of that opening.
No, it sort of looks like a Duran Duran video. Doesn't it? It's just, it's not really. You're not really learning much other than future equals bad.
It was a simple bit of exposition. It was just like, right, let's get this set up and get on with it. Very straightforward.
I totally get why it's there, but it just feels a little bit like, I don't know. It feels a bit, to me. I think it would be better if we just started in 1984 and then all this weird shit happened, and you're like, what the fuck? And then you get that extended flash forward anyway later on in the film, so you still have a glimpse of it. That's how I would have done it. But I imagine the thought process was, we gotta hook the audience. We gotta let them see what's.
Yeah, it looks old, doesn't it?
They didn't have the budget to do it well,
yeah,
I guess.
yeah, exactly.
We see a big naked man appear like Mr. Bean on the ground.
How is it like Mr. Bean?
Yeah. Have you not seen the opening to Mr. Bean, the TV show?
I haven't seen any of the Mr. Bean films, so that
lost
on me. I'm sorry.
It's in the TV series. He just appears in a shaft of light on the ground. Anyway. We get a punk Bill Paxton, which is a real highlight of the film.
Yeah, wash day tomorrow. Nothing clean.
So you have Arnie, the Terminator, has a little to do with a couple of punks. He takes their clothes, their boots, and their motorcycles. And then, so when does Kyle turn up? When does Kyle Reese?
I tell you what was interesting about this. Watching this with my son. Kyle turns up, and as we are going to come to understand, Kyle is there to protect Sarah Connor. But that's not actually clear from the start. And as we were watching it, it's only when they have the big confrontation in that nightclub that we realise Kyle is not another Terminator.
Right.
So as we were watching it, as my son was watching it for the first time, he just thought Kyle Reese was a crap Terminator. He'd like fallen awkwardly as he came through time.
See,
wasn't as good at getting close.
He's the Mr. Bean Terminator.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, this was a film that I first came to through pop culture, and I'd kind of absorbed through osmosis, and I'd seen South Park and The Simpsons and all sorts of things do their own elaborate parodies of it.
Aaron, I'm standing at the time portal, which scientists say follows Terminator rules. That is, it's one way only and you can't go back. This is in contrast to, say, Back to the Future rules, where back and forth is possible. And, of course, Time Rider rules, which are just plain silly. Anyway, it appears that the man from the future is here to stay.
As a result, that twist never played for me, and it was only on this rewatch that I really realised, oh yeah, look, this is actually
exactly
a twist.
A reveal. And I hadn't realised that either, because I haven't seen this for the first time for 35 years. So it was interesting to watch it with someone for the first time.
But you're right. Kyle Reese kind of just plays like a shit Terminator. He's like the creepy. He's the creepy one, and Arnie. He's like the brains, and Arnie's the brawn. Classic double.
Go get him, Arnie.
Yeah, exactly.
And plus, you got the police there, like trying to follow the pattern and all that. So it's more like a detective murder mystery sort of thing.
Yeah,
serial killer. And then you've got the girl, the damsel in distress, who is going to be the next victim.
I'm not surprised she's in distress. Have you seen her hair?
Oh my god! Oh my god!
It looked like one of those show dogs that had sex with Susie Quattro. That's one for the youngsters.
I had forgotten just how 80s it all was. Yeah.
Yeah, man. 84.
Yeah, and like your punks, like not even the right era for that. But then you got the nightclub and all that sort of thing.
It's to the point that when it became time to make Terminator Genesis, recreating scenes from the first film digitally to get them exactly spot on, exactly as they looked, going back to the old footage and the old rushes and like tinkering with them, But when it came to Linda Hamilton's haircut, they were like, no, just don't do that.
No.
Just give her a normal haircut. Just give her a normal haircut.
People will just won't believe it.
This was the most notable thing that I don't think I really picked up on when I was younger, when I last watched this film. The acting's pretty bad.
Yeah,
I did make a note of, I think we're seeing why Michael Bihn's career never quite paid off.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Michael Biehn first then, because I again, as a child of the 80s who loved action films, Michael Biehn was a massive star for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's 2 films.
You know, he was in this, he was in Aliens, he was huge, he was in all the best films.
Was he?
No, he was in this and Aliens.
I just thought he was James Cameron's mate, like Bill Paxton.
Well, I guess looking back, that does seem now fairly obvious.
To watch this film and go, yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the one whose career is gonna go take off from this is not the obvious thing, because it's not like his acting really stands out.
I think there's an idea that like Arnie was this incredibly charismatic, imposing figure in this film, and even that doesn't really work for me. I don't particularly think much of him here either. He's there. He says the lines. I don't think he's really bringing all that much to it.
But yeah, I mean, his career is extraordinary, frankly, given the name. You know, like he's credited as Arnold Strong in a couple of very early things, but that name is completely ridiculous, and it's like no branding person, no agent would tell you to use that name, especially in the 80s.
Is Mark Strong not his real name? Is he an Austrian immigrant on the sly?
The voice, the fact that when he first starring in American films, he doesn't even speak English properly.
Oh, they dubbed him over with another actor in some of his early films.
The fact that he managed to turn that into A-list Hollywood like leading man it's remarkable, really. This is definitely his most iconic role, I would say, despite the rest of his career being very iconic as well. But this is the one.
Yeah, you think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think you think of the poster for Terminator with him wearing sunglasses, holding a gun, leather jacket.
One red eye. So, well, the one other member of cast that I want to mention is Lance Henriksen. Again, it looks like it's another sort of Bill Paxton situation as a mate of James Cameron. But notable, he plays a minor role here, but notable just because James Cameron wanted him as the Terminator.
Oh, really? Right.
Yeah, and like if you see him as Bishop in Aliens, there's kind of robotic nature to it.
Yeah.
But they obviously...
Well, I mean, the Terminator in the second film, Robert Patrick, he's
a poor man's Lance Henriksen.
Physically similar to Lance Henriksen.
If Lance Henriksen hadn't played that part in Aliens, it probably would have been Lance Henriksen. I mean, that's complete speculation on my part, but Robert Patrick looks like a young Lance Henriksen. Yeah.
I don't know if calling him the poor man's Lance Henriksen's quite fair. Maybe like the Aldi knockoff Lance Henriksen, because Aldi do very good stuff with their knockoffs, so... I just want to give Robert Patrick a bit of credit, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. Robert Patrick.
Yeah.
Back to the plot. What about that scene where we have a big fake Arnie head?
Self-surgery scene.
Oh, where he's repairing himself.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, the funny thing was, just before that scene, he repairs his arm, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And Thomas said, again, 13-year-old judge in the corner said, "That's pretty good. That's a really good effect." Mm-hmm. And then it flicked up to his eye, and Thomas laughed out.
Yeah. Well,
he said, "Oh, it looks like Planet of the Apes." And I've got to tell you, he didn't mean the new Planet of the Apes.
My partner couldn't watch as he was cutting into his arm. She was like, "Tell me when it stopped. It's freaking me out." And then the rubbery face came out, and she was like, "Oh, it's shit."
Yeah.
So yeah, similar.
It doesn't hold up to today's standards. It's true, but I must admit, and we've had this discussion before. When it comes to old school practical effects like that, when I see shit effects like that, it gives me a sense of nostalgia somehow, and it's kind of like cute.
Yeah.
Whereas when I see crap CGI effects from like 2001, you just think, "Oh, this is crap."
This was another one where I was confusing it with Terminator 2 because they have another Arnold surgery scene that
we'll get into that.
Yeah, but again I was kind of confusing it with that one, so I can go with it. But yeah, it doesn't look great, does it?
Did it look good at the time? I don't know. Will people accept?
I don't think it did. I don't think it did. I remember that scene being a little bit making me feel a little bit ill because he's poking a scalpel into his eye, but then thinking, oh, but it's obviously just rubber.
Yeah. There were films from this era with similar animatronic kind of effects and what have you that look so much better. I don't think that the era. I think it's the fact it was a very low budget film for what it was. You know, The Thing was made around this time, and the effects in that are outstanding. So
we'll be talking about that soon. Won't we? Okay, so the one really big misfire in the whole film for me is the love story between Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor.
Not just an annoying crammed in love story, not just that we're meant to buy that these two fall in love like immediately and their love is anything more than just like they get horny for each other and all that
in a moment of passion.
Not just all that, but then they try and justify it by giving Kyle Reese this backstory that he basically used to wank off over a photo of her for like 20 years.
Yeah, but bear in mind, this was they'd cut the internet off by that point, so...
And bear in mind, that is a pretty sexy headband.
But, this is probably the element of the film that's aged the most poorly, I would say. The idea that Kyle Reese spends his entire life obsessing over this woman, and I think we're meant to take that as kind of a nice, noble, beautiful, romantic story, rather than him being a fucking creep.
Yes. It just doesn't play at all. And I like the idea that he comes back in time and fucks her, and then that he's John Connor's dad.
Yeah, I agree. I just wish
complete.
They played it as more of a kind of, hey, look, sometimes people have a bit of a rough tumble in the sack, and it leads to a baby, and this shit happens, man. And
yeah, they're in a stressful situation. They need to take solace in each other. That's I get that. But yeah,
once again, Alan, your problem with this entire part of the story is that human beings express love for each other.
It's just
it's the idea that in those 8 hours together they experienced more love than 500 lifetimes or whatever she says. It's like, fuck off. No, you didn't. Yeah. I can buy that if you experience something very brief and then it's torn away from you, you can kind of you'll forever remember it as that initial spark of excitement and believe that. But it's not true, is it? That's not how it works. Imagine if he'd stayed alive, she'd just be getting pissed off with him not being able to set the clock on the VCR and stuff like that. He'd be like, "What?
What's a VCR?"
Oh, you've stolen my soul with that camera. She'd be getting sick of it. I mean, of course, they have more technology in the future, so I don't really know what I'm doing. You'd be like, where's your laser cigarette lighter? We don't have those yet. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Only what you see, pal. One of my favourite scenes from when I was a kid was that where the Terminator goes to the gun shop and he buys the guns. Oh yeah, it's the first time he says "Uzi 9mm," and where he asks for some phase plasma rifle. Only what you see, pal. And that was a line we used to use a lot when I was a kid.
Really? He's trying to get into the police station. They won't let him in, so he has a look at the dimensions of the building. He goes, "I'll be back." Now, who could imagine that would still be going on 40 years later? It's still trotting that out.
It's so throwaway. It's not like a clever line. It's not like a cool line. It's not even a particularly great scene in this film. There's much better scenes. But that is the famous line.
Yeah, I don't know why.
And they brought it back
and it's still being repeated and parodied to this day.
In every single Terminator film, yeah.
By Arnold Schwarzenegger. He can't stop saying it. It's like Tourette's.
I get it, right? They're making Terminator 2, so what do you put on the poster? You put, "I'll be back," or "I came back," or whatever. Like, fine.
I told you I'd be back.
Yeah, but then after that...
It even jumped the shark to Arnold's political career. He used to say it at his political rallies when he was running for governor of California.
What? He just went up in front
I'm going to terminate the opposition.
he properly leaned into it, Sol. He really leaned into it. Yeah. November the 11th.
Was it just Terminator, or did he go up on the podium and say, like, this other guy running for the Democrats, he's one ugly motherfucker?
What's your position on the Afghanistan war? If they bleed, we can kill them.
I want to be the people's governor. I will work honestly, without fear or favor, to do what is right for all Californians.
Join Arnold and let's bring California back.
Well, I know we're all sick of I'll Be Back, but I've done an I'll Be Back quiz. Would you like to? Would you like to play?
Oh yeah.
Which of these films in the classic era does he not say I'll be back? Okay. Commando, Running Man, Red Heat, Total Recall. Ooh. So he says it in 3 of those 4 films.
Total Recall.
I'm a big fan of Running Man. Does he? I think he definitely says it. He definitely says it in that. What were the other options?
He does.
Commando.
He definitely says it in Running Man to the quiz show.
I'm going with Total Recall. It's the only one of those I've seen, and I don't remember him saying it in it.
You're joking, Sol. Oh, we've got so many more of these podcasts to do. No, he does say it in Total Recall. He does. He says it in Total Recall just before he gets put into the machine where they're going to wipe his brain.
I'm going to go with Red Heat. Was that one of the...
Correct.
Because he barely speaks English in that. He barely speaks at all.
Exactly. Red Heat's probably the first one that you could legitimately call a comedy. Although he's in that with James Belushi, and ostensibly Belushi's doing the comedy turn. But yes, that's where he's trying to change his style a little bit.
Has he never done a film where he like needs to grab a disguise, him and someone else, and they're in the they like end up in a concert or something where people are dressed up as classic composers, and and they look at the costume rack and he says, "You'll be Mozart, I'll be back."
You should send that into Saturday Night Live, Sol.
I'll send it into Graham Linehan, I think.
Start at the end and work backwards.
Yeah.
All right, here's a question for you, quick one. In which film is the phrase said in a strong Irish accent? "I'll be back"?
Ooh.
Not by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay, I'm going to go with Snatch.
It's one of the many spoofs.
Is it Total Recall, the remake starring Colin Farrell?
That's a good suggestion, actually. No, it's not. No, it is, in fact, the Mrs. Brown's Boys movie.
Oh, my God.
In 1991, a band, and I use that word in inverted commas, called Arnie and the Terminators, released a song called "I'll Be Back." Shamefully, this reached number 5.
Wow.
Who were the people behind Arnie and the Terminators?
Oh, I've got a guess.
Go on.
KLF.
No, but that's quite a good guess. No, it's not.
Stock Aitken and Waterman.
No, I'll tell you who it was. It was the posse from Steve Wright in the Afternoon Radio 1 show. So I'm going to send this to you now, and Sol, you'll have to edit this in because this is brilliant.
I've never had a problem in getting what I lack. You don't need please or thank you. You just need. I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll be back. If you're lying, I'll be back. It's not the time.
So this was obviously, this is a terrible business. It was obviously a light-hearted throwaway character that they then turned into a jingle and then inexplicably metastasized into a record without anyone saying it was a bad idea. And they were on top of the pops, drunkenly performing this terrible, terrible business. Yeah. But this is how big Arnold Schwarzenegger was in 1991. Do you... Steve Wright's still on, isn't he? He's on Radio 2 now. I haven't listened to Steve Wright in the afternoon for years. But when I was a kid, he was like... That was comedy back in the 90s, you know. Steve Wright and his gurning posse of laughing monkeys who would just chuckle along to whatever bullshit he spouted. And then occasionally he would let one of them do a little character.
Ding dong.
And this is the result.
Should we just make it clear that this is Steve Wright, the British DJ, not Stephen Wright, the American comedian who's in Reservoir Dogs? This next one's a big hit from Arnie and the Terminators.
Oh god! Right, we've all got to write a Stephen Wright joke about Terminators. Oh god! All I can think of is Terminator. I just met her, and that's not in the style of Stephen Wright at all.
That's good. That's good though.
I should have used that as a tagline for the film, to be honest.
Terminator. I barely know it.
All right, last question, which is more about the ridiculous names of Arnold Schwarzenegger's characters. So I'm going to give you 5 character names from Arnold Schwarzenegger's films, and you tell me which ones of these are real. One of these is not true. So in Commando, he's called John Matrix.
John Matrix.
That's real. That's real.
Yeah.
In True Lies, he's called Harry Tasker.
I think
definitely
that's
true.
real.
Yeah,
that's real.
Trasco.
In Total Recall, he's called Dennis Quaid.
That's real.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, wait.
In Running Man, he's called Ben Richards.
Yeah.
And in Expendables 2, he's called Trench Mauser.
They all sound real. Right, I know. I've definitely heard of Johnny Matrix or whatever it was.
John
so
Matrix
sure
is definitely correct.
Sean Matrix.
Yeah, definitely correct. I know which one's wrong. I know this one. It's Total Recall. He's Douglas Quaid.
It is, yeah, it's not Dennis Quaid. I was trying to lure you in there. All right, that's the quiz.
Where are we with the Terminator then?
Well, one thing I want to mention, which I liked, which is kind of one of those things that you take for granted now. I like the sort of Terminator vision, where we see the world from his infrared point of view. And I wondered if that was original, because you see that a lot nowadays. Like I think of RoboCop and other things, but
I think that was something they might have cribbed from Westworld.
Oh, really? Okay. There's a nice moment where he chooses what to say and he decides to say "fuck you, asshole." but yeah, again, when I was 11, that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. And Predator, we see in another Arnie film, we see from the Predator's point of view, don't we?
And of course, in Junior, you see it from the baby's point of view in the womb.
Is that right? I mean, that actually could be right. I don't know if you're taking the piss.
I've never seen that film. Is that film really about Arnold Schwarzenegger giving birth? Did that happen?
Yeah.
I didn't just misunderstand a plot synopsis. That is what it's about, right?
Oh no, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely
Arnold
right.
Schwarzenegger is a pregnant man. Yeah.
Wow.
Alan, let's talk at the end of the film. Let's just talk about the bit where Arnie's not in it anymore. So there's that big petrol tanker explosion, big fire, and that's the first moment where we think, all right, the Terminator's dead, they've escaped, and then suddenly it comes, the exoskeleton, sorry, is it endoskeleton? Metal skeleton comes out of the flames, and that is a terrific moment. That is a really great cinematic moment where that skeleton comes towards him.
You know what annoys me with it is that Kyle Reese seems to be surprised.
Well,
surely he's encountered using fire on a Terminator before.
Yeah,
but it's a big old explosion as well,
But yeah, right. To give him the I mean, it is a great moment
and a classic slasher thing. Yeah,
it's very much the whole film.
And in terms of
to that moment, you can definitely tell that's what
we've slagged off the CGI, but the 13-year-old boy was very impressed with that. Was it stop motion animation? It was very good.
Yeah. And it gets away with using stop-start, which can look a bit shit. I think more than anything because it is a robot, so it's alright that it looks vaguely. That works in its favour. I must say, although the Terminator looks kind of creepy, I don't think you ever really get much of a sense of any impending, overbearing power behind it in this film. I don't think it's really as menacing as it ought to be. I don't find the Terminator very scary.
Which do you mean, as a robot or when it's Arnie?
Well, both.
I disagree. I think he's a really good bogeyman. That speech. It can't be reasoned with. It can't be bargained with. It will not stop ever until you are dead. I think I mean that's pretty on the nose in terms of spelling it out to us. But I think the action gives you that. The action makes you feel that it will not be stopped. It's the unstoppable force. I feel that. I watching the film again, even now, I feel that remorselessness.
I don't know. I don't know. I think this might be. I've been spoiled with modern effects and modern films and things. He always looks like you could. Like when he smashes through the glass of that door and he's trying to get in, and it's like it's just a puppet, and it's like, well, I could beat that in a fight. It's like fucking Kermit. Like, great, it looks very good, it's very believable, but it doesn't feel like it just doesn't feel like it's got the weight and the power behind it. And when it's Arnie, it's just a bit too. Oh, it's a bloke. I don't know. It just never quite plays as scary for me as I think it's meant to here.
What about we glossed over the police station where he sort of cuts through all those police like a hot knife through butter?
Well, it's just a guy with a gun.
I think that's a great scene.
I get that the Daleks used to have people hiding behind the sofa in the old days as well, and people were easier to scare back then, weren't they? Frankenstein's a PG.
Yeah.
Well, at the back end of this film, it started getting a bit slack. It's just sort of like action sequences. So I was ready for it to be finished. But it's an odd script, the structure of it. I just sort of feel like it needs something else. And then what they give us is this love story that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
No, I think the chase is enough. I think as we move on to the later films, when they try to make it a larger world, that's where it sort of gets a bit too baggy for me. I think it's a taut chase film, and that's good.
I mean, I don't know. I think this film's strength is its imagination. It's got a lot of great ideas and concepts dotted around in it. A little bit more of that would have gone a long way, because I agree it does get a bit baggy near the end, and it's just a bit too long. It's weird because I think the pacing in the original Westworld is brilliant, but Terminator is a good 15-20 minutes longer than Westworld, and there's not a huge deal more in terms of story. Plus, Westworld's one of those slow burn films where you have about 40 minutes before shit hits the fan and you're just waiting for it, whereas Terminator throws you straight into the action, essentially. So they're really stretching it out.
Yeah.
But, I feel like I sound like I've been very negative, and I really like this film. So,
yeah.
I think conceptually it's wonderful idea. I don't know if we've really covered enough time travel films for this to come up. Have we done anything beyond Back to the Future on this show, time travel wise? Army of Darkness.
Nothing overt, like a bit of play with it in like the Avengers series and all that, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, time travel is like, it's almost like zombie movies. I fucking love a time travel movie. It's one of my things. I don't know why.
But do you not find that if you try and think too hard about it, it just all like crumbles in your hands like sand? I used to get really angry about this. I used to spend a lot of time, too much time, thinking about the paradoxes and all that sort of thing. And I'm old. I basically can't keep a thought in my head for 10 minutes now. So I just go with it, and I seem to enjoy it a bit more. But it does annoy me.
I think it's quite rare that a film doesn't follow its own internal logic, to be honest. Usually it works. It annoys me when there are problems with it, but I can think fourth dimensionally. I'm alright with time travel. I can think that way. It doesn't bother me too much. Yeah, this franchise gets messy, but we don't know how I feel about the sequels yet, do we? So with regards to this film, it works. There's an idea of fate and all that shit, and I don't like the idea of fate, but I can totally buy the idea of time as an unchangeable thing and it all being inevitable. And
I give it a very sturdy 8 out of 10.
Well, I've gone 9. I was really happy with this film. I thought it held up as well as better than I remembered, actually. Better than I remembered, because in my memory I thought it was a silly Arnie film, and I thought it was a good taut chase film. I enjoyed it.
Well, I'm pleased you've both gone so high, because I'm also giving it, and I will acknowledge this is an incredibly generous score. I feel like I should maybe not be giving it quite as high a score, but I am giving it a 9 as well. I think a lot of that is to do with just the concepts and the legacy and everything being factored into it.
There is just something about it, and I think there's something that I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something that James Cameron is bringing to this that lifts it above its sort of B-movie status. There's a vision behind it, a talent behind it. Because, the acting isn't great. The plot is a bit sloppy, although it's a great concept at its centre. The effects can be a bit dodgy, but it could be a B movie, and it's like, isn't that film with that wrestler in it? Oh no, it's not a wrestler. Yeah, it's something like that. You know what I mean? It's like it could be such an easily forgettable film with a bit of cult success.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there is an element of the second one rising its status up. Certainly. I mean, should we move on to it?
Yeah, let's do that.
Judgment Day, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Spelt wrong because the Americans leave the E out.
Yeah. So in between this, James Cameron went off and made Aliens.
There's a long time between the two films, wasn't there?
Really established himself, and then he made Abyss, which is important because it set up the effects work that they would use for this film. Sort of set the precedent for it.
I like The Abyss. I know we're not reviewing The Abyss today, but I think that's a good film. I think that gets really badly slated, and I enjoyed it.
Well, I think James Cameron in general is an incredibly safe pair of hands when it comes to making a film. I don't think he's ever really put much of a foot wrong, even if I don't love out and out all of his stuff. I don't think he's really done anything bad. I have a feeling Alan's going to think less of this one.
Oh, yeah?
But it's going to be hard for me to talk about it without just coming out and saying it. I think Terminator 2 is an absolute cinematic masterpiece. Tour de force. It is everything filmmaking, certainly blockbuster filmmaking, should aspire towards. It reminded me of Jurassic Park a bit, watching it again, because we spoke about that a year ago, 2 years ago, but it was a similar era, and it was very early kind of, look, we can do insane special effects work now.
Yeah.
Like, look at this mix. It was an early use of CGI, but it holds up so well, and it's because it's seamlessly blended with practical effects.
Yeah.
They only play to their strengths with it. And frankly, watching Terminator Genisys again last night, which also has a liquid Terminator in it, it doesn't look all that much better than it does in this film from 1991. It is astonishing. But beyond that, I think this film builds upon everything from the first Terminator. It refines it. It hones in on what worked. It cuts through a lot of the stuff that didn't work. I think it is just an astonishing bit of work.
Well, I think I agree with that with one caveat. So I let me put this into context. This came out in 1991, so I was 16, and I went to the cinema to see this, and I was really, really looking forward to this. Terminator was one of my favourite films. The sequel was coming out. All these special effects had been hyped, and it was going to be this incredible thing, and it was. Those effects, they still hold up pretty well now, but I remember sitting in the cinema thinking, this is incredible, And I agree with you that the story of the Terminators, this unstoppable killing machine, the twist being that we've got Arnie on our side now, that bit works. For me, the bit that doesn't work for me in this film is where we expand the world and we're trying to stop Judgment Day. And I get that's that's the whole point of the film, but that bit feels baggy to me. That bit feels like we're losing the focus of the story.
It works for me because when I watched the first Terminator film, as a teenager, I was sat there. I was being shown it by a friend's parents, and my friend, they were like, "Oh, you've got to watch this Terminator film." And the whole way through, I was like, "Why don't they just go back in time and stop Skynet being made?" and they kept going, "Oh well," and I like that this film kind of addresses that head on. Like, that would be sensible, wouldn't it? Yeah, let's do that. But I like them. I think they expand the world perfectly here. I think this is an expansion that works, frankly. Mm-hmm. I think they stumble with the subsequent films, but here they do it. Everything that's an extension of the first film feels organic and right. The fact that Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor's grown into this,
she's great in this. I think she's really good in this.
Yeah, she's the character feels right. John Connor, it's kind of not what you would expect to pick up with this film, and John Connor's like a little bratty tearaway kid. But again, it works. It feels right. It helps recontextualize the film. And now this is a big thing for me. Recontextualizing Arnie as the good guy. Oh, it's perfect. What I said about him not really playing as a big menacing thing for me in the previous film. Well, I think he does do the lovable, cuddly good guy. I think he does the boy and his dog kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Perfectly. And he is brilliant as this kind of, because there's this whole boy and his dog subplot running through this film, and it actually gives the film legitimate emotional weight in a kind of family movie sense that plays perfectly. And on the flip side of that, you've got Robert Patrick as the T-1000, and I think he is legitimately scary. That is very that sense of this is an unstoppable.
He's Yul Brynner in Westworld. He's just that sort of not the big tough guy, just the creepy looking, ferrety, dangerous guy that you wouldn't trust as far as you could throw him.
But that's it. But he's a different kind of threat. He's the kind of guy who won't beat you to a pulp. He'll cut your throat, and that's, to me, that's scarier. I don't know. I just on a broad instinctive level, I feel like I could probably take a beating, but I don't feel like I can, be stabbed through the head and survive. And it's just, there's just something very cat-like, very precise about the T-1000 when compared to the more just like smash everything up approach that the other Terminator takes. And I think Robert Patrick is wonderful. I think he plays it so well. I actually think Robert Patrick's a really fantastic actor. I've seen him in enough other things to, I've seen him do some real acting.
He played a guest role in The Sopranos, which I don't know if you two watch The Sopranos. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. I've still not seen it.
He had a short sort of, I don't know, 6 or 7 episode character arc, and he was fantastic in that. Just such a good actor.
But this is it. They cast a legit actor in the role, whereas they didn't really with Arnie, and I think it really pays off. You can tell he's studied predatory animals and things and how they move. You can tell he's done all this homework, and the results are fantastic. For me, I think Robert Patrick is, other than the T-1000, I probably know him best as the guy who replaced Fox Mulder on The X-Files when David Duchovny left in the sort of shitty latter seasons. Yeah, he was one of the, when they were like, we can keep this going with new agents, they brought him in as Agent Daggett or Doggett or something. And
is that when David Duchovny went off for his stellar film career?
Yeah, exactly. And those latter day X-Files weren't great, but he was. So I really like Robert Patrick. I think he's very good.
Yeah, I do like, I really like the refiguring of Arnie as the good guy. I think it's not just because he's better in that role, but it's just such a great concept for a sequel.
Yeah.
To bring like the old favourite back, you've got essentially the same kind of chase story, but they tweak it enough to give it new flavour. You got Linda Hamilton is now this kind of changed person, but then you've got the boy there as like the innocent still, the one who needs to be protected to some extent, but he's not like useless either. Yeah, really, really nice concept for a sequel.
I think the cast in this film are just all round wonderful, and it's such a contrast compared to the first film because, it's everyone. It's even like Joe Morton as Miles Dyson. He brings such.
I really
a charm.
want to mention that. There's something about him that I really like, and it's kind of this. Yeah. There's a sort of weird nervousness to him, but it's not like overplayed. Yeah. And then, do you know what I think it is? It's because he gets shot in the shoulder, and so when they're walking around, he's trying to look casual. He's got his hand in his pocket so that it doesn't look weird and unnatural. But it means he's just like, even in like the most stressful situations of being shot at, he's just casually got his hand in his jeans, and it sort of gives it this weird like, oh yeah, I'm just casually getting shot at kind of thing.
But he comes across as such a sympathetic, nice guy. And that just makes that whole sequence work because you don't want them to just kill him, even though that would solve everything.
And they set up the family.
I think, and I think the fact that this film gets as deep into, you know, that sort of stuff as it does is quite surprising for this sort of gung-ho action movie.
And I agree with you. I like the character, I like the actor, but I still think that whole section, there's about half an hour of the film where we're just trying to break into the lab and blow it all up and everything. And I didn't think we needed that. I just thought it slowed the film's pace down. We that whole sequence, we lose the T-1000.
That was
and the T-1000 is the bogeyman.
Can I ask you guys, do you know which cut of this film you watched?
Yeah.
I think I watched a different version because there was a dream sequence with Michael Biehn in it that I don't think I've ever seen before.
I watched that as well.
So,
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
So, all right. So the theatrical cut of this film is 2 hours 17 minutes long, but there is a special edition extended cut, which is I think the only version I've ever seen, which is the one I've got on DVD, which is 2 hours and 36 minutes, something like that.
About 20 minutes.
And
pretty long.
And they add a load of scenes in, such as that dream sequence with Michael Biehn, such as all the stuff with the orderlies being mean to Linda Hamilton, such as Robert Patrick killing Max. That was just inferred in the other ones. I mean, it's a long film, but I have to say, I never once get remotely bored with it. It suckers me in, and I love it. And I'd love to watch the theatrical cut. I imagine it probably is a bit better, a bit stronger, with a bit of that unnecessary stuff taken out. But
I definitely noticed, in that section where you mentioned Gareth, Robert Patrick suddenly comes back and it's like, oh shit, I've completely forgotten about him. And
I missed him. I really missed him.
No, the film's good enough that I wasn't thinking, where the fuck is T-1000? I was watching, engaged in what was happening, but when he came back, I was like, oh, I'd forgotten about that whole element of the film. I also agree that I was watching this for a long time and it didn't feel overblown particularly. It was only perhaps towards the end where it just gets a bit too much going on and a bit too much action for me. But that's more my taste, I think.
Beyond the CGI and the computer effects, beyond the kind of, oh, look how we've made, you know, a man appear to be made out of liquid and so on with practical effects. The straightforward let's fly a helicopter into the back of a car special effects in this film are astonishing. That action
There's
scene
a great scene early on where the T-1000's in the truck and he's chasing Arnie's on the bike, they're on the motorbikes, they're going through the sewers there. Yeah. That's a really taut action scene. I like that scene.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and there's no CGI there, that's just some stuntman in the truck. That's great.
And this is the thing, like I get criticized sometimes because I can't stand Mad Max Fury Road and it's just people driving cars around and people are like, oh, but it's amazing, and it's like, yeah, it's amazing, but give me a story to like wrap it around something. Don't, like, I need more than just they're driving in the desert. And that's what this film is. It is that same level of astonishing like stunt work and this effects work and just like throwing like cars at other cars, but you've got all this cool time travel robot stuff going on at the same time, and it's great.
That's it. I think where it lost me, and not lost is a bit strong, but where I was sort of slacking was at the end after Dyson like blows up Cyberdyne or whatever it is. Then there's this whole ending action sequence where they T-1000's chasing them, all that. That was the sequence where it was like, we kind of resolved the plot now, and it's just another action sequence, and it went on for a long time, and that was the bit where I was just like, okay, I've had enough now, come on.
And I know what you mean, but I love all that stuff. I think it's done so well, the way they have to deal with the liquid Terminator, and what I was saying with the first film being so full of cool ideas, this film is like 3 times as many cool concepts and ideas. I mean, you've got the T-1000, that alone is just stroke of genius, but then they play with it. They really don't shy away from, you know, make it, you know, could he just be a pack of cigarettes? No. Well, he can be the floor. Oh yeah, he can be the floor.
There's a bit at the end where there's lots of droplets of the liquid metal on the floor, and you see them just coming together slowly. Yeah. That's again a really ominous scene when you think, oh god, it's just time, it's just a matter of time, he's pulling himself back together. You know, that's great tension building.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one scene that we've skipped over that I really enjoyed was the escape from the asylum scene. Oh yeah. That's a really great sequence. Linda Hamilton does it really well. And The scene where she runs into Arnie, and she goes into slow motion, and that's her living nightmare. That's the thing that she's not even sure is real or not.
Yeah,
she plays that so well. It's a really good piece of acting and a really good piece of filmmaking.
I'm always a bit dubious when things suddenly go into slow motion, I must admit, but it does work because it's sort of tied into a dream sequence. We've seen her in the dream sequence running through those corridors before.
On a similar note to slow motion, if I have one complaint about this film, it is the lifeless Linda Hamilton narration that will occasionally kick in and just like explain everything. Feels like a studio note.
Yeah, there was one moment where they're driving to Cyberdyne with Dyson to go and blow everything up. And
as we drove towards Cyberdyne, I had to remind the audience how I was feeling.
Do you know, I have written exactly the same note in the same place. You're absolutely right.
I was going to ask, is that in the proper film, or was this one of the deleted scenes that they've added in? Because it just felt like something that should have been cut out.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, obviously
that's why it's
didn't it?
there. Maybe, yeah. Because it really feels, like I say, it feels like a studio note. It feels like a Blade Runner. You've got to come in and patch over something. Yeah, you know what? That might be... But yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, and that's the one. It's the one thing in this film that doesn't do it for me.
I got a couple of other things.
Go on.
They flirt with this idea, never quite get a handle on it, that Arnie Terminator is a father figure to John, and it feels like they want to do something about that, and they never quite do. But then they try and give it a payoff in the same way, and it just doesn't quite work for me.
I think it works.
They need
all that.
My very last note here is Arnie says, "Sorry, John, I have to go away. Sorry," and I've written, "Where has this emotion come from?"
Yeah,
that it felt like that. Well, hang on a minute. Just because he's now dying, why is he suddenly care?
They come into a lot of it where they're talking about how
John cares about him all the way through. There's the bit earlier on where Linda Hamilton wants to smash his brain, and he puts his hand down in the way of the hammer.
No, I don't get that John cares about the Terminator, but it's the other way around. Why does the Terminator, other than to protect him, why does he care?
Because they flipped a switch in his brain so he could learn. And he learns to feel. He learns to feel emotion.
I get that. I just didn't feel there was enough learning.
Because this boy took the time to teach him to smile and to teach him to say "hasta la vista, baby."
Yeah, we haven't really talked about the comedy bits.
There is that specific scene in the car where he's teaching him to smile and how to be sort of nice and stuff, and saying teaching him all the slang basically. Yeah, tell him.
Well, a double dumbass on you.
And I like that because it's actually quite quick. It's a little bit of comic relief in this scene. It's they don't dwell on it, and it all pays off later as well. I love it. I think it's really nicely, tautly written, good stuff.
Mm-hmm. I have to say, for whatever reason, I actually watched these films out of order. I pulled a Gareth Allen and rewatched them out of order, and I watched the third one before the second one. The third one, not to get too ahead, but there is a lot of like very egregious comedy stuff dropped in. And I was sat there thinking, why did they do this? Because I didn't remember any comedy in these films from James Cameron. But then when I got here, there's a lot of little comedy moments. There's a lot of brevity, but it works here. It works so well. And I just think James Cameron has a good grip on what he's doing, I suppose. He just,
I'll tell you what James Cameron's not good at.
Go on.
Sort of natural dialogue. It was like there was a bit where they go to the desert and they meet Enrique, who's like holding all the weapons and that. And it's like when Sarah and Enrique are conversing, and it's just like it's like the soldiers in Aliens. It's just like this banter is so weak.
A big chunk of that is added to the extended cut that we watched. I think a big chunk of that is taken out in the original.
Well, they obviously could tell it.
Yeah, that's true. I don't remember that. I don't remember that being so long before. So yes,
there's one really great scene that I love that I want to mention, and it's when the foster parents are killed.
I love it, yeah.
That whole scene is just perfect. It's like on the other side of the phone. You see
Hitchcockian tension, and you know something's not right. And then they kill the guy off screen, but you're waiting to see what she's actually done to him.
And the reveal is great. That shot where it just pans across.
The reveal is great, isn't it? You almost think, well, there's no need to show. We know what's happened. And then you see and you think, actually, that looks great. It's a fantastic effect.
Darkly comedic at the same time as being like quite shocking and unnerving and menacing, and the whole thing with The bit where Arnie says, "Oh, well, have a good day" in English, and then T-1000 replies in English instead of Austrian, instead of German. Oh, I love this film, Alan. I love it.
Yeah. Now, John Connor throughout this series, bit of a dick, isn't he?
Yeah.
This is the one film where I can get away with John Connor, where I'm all right with him, because he is a bit of a dick, but he's a kid. You got to give him a bit of slack. He's had a hard life. Yeah.
You can tell he's a delinquent though, because he listens to Guns N' Roses. Only bad kids listen to Guns N' Roses.
He's got a friend with a mullet.
He has an extremely 90s haircut, but it's not too bad. You know, it gets away with it. It's not like that fucking dead dog on Linda Hamilton's head in the previous one.
Yeah. But you've got... I like how he's got a computer's a magic way to get money out of cash machines. Yep. It's good. That's good.
All kids were hackers in the 90s, Alan. This is just...
I love that, though, in those films. It's just like, you can do anything, basically.
Well, that pays off later, doesn't it, with the door code?
The, what is he, a psychologist or psychiatrist, probably, played by Earl Bowen, Dr. Silverman, who's in charge of Linda Hamilton. He's in the first film as the person they bring in to see try and figure out what's going on.
He's a recurring character, isn't he?
Doesn't believe anything she says until Terminator walks in and slaps him around the face. That's a nice tie-in with the first film, and then they pull it out in the third one as well. It feels a bit egregious.
I do quite like, in general, the way that the sort of real world interacts with what's happening. So, the police turn up and they're saying, they turn up at the asylum and say to her, look, we've got this CCTV of this guy and this is the CCTV of 1984. It looks like the same guy. And of course, we know it's the Terminator and it's a different one and all this. But to them, of course, it's the same guy and he shot these 13 police officers. Yeah. I think it's quite interesting how you see that. How would the police cope with such a situation? It's obviously all absurd.
One scene definitely want to talk about is that surgery scene, the brain surgery scene. Another wonderful bit of movie magic, and this is why I love practical effects, because there is something magic about it. It's like, even when you know it's done, it is like, oh right, that's really clever, as opposed to, oh, we did it with computers. Yeah.
Do you know how that's done?
I do.
No, go on.
Do you not know, Gareth, how they do that scene in the mirror?
No, go on, tell me.
Because let's just describe the scene. They're doing surgery on Arnie's brain, and then it sort of pans around, and you can see his reflection in the mirror, but the camera's not in the reflection in the mirror, and Linda Hamilton's in the reflection in the mirror, and she's in the shot where she's doing the brain surgery. So go on, Sol, how is it done?
Instead of doing some trickery on Arnie's head, instead of creating a mirror, they created a window. And they had Arnie sat facing the camera on the other side in the quote-unquote reflection, and a fake head in front of the camera for her to actually be digging around in.
But Sol, we clearly see Linda Hamilton both in the camera and on the reflection. How is that possible?
Linda Hamilton has a sister.
An identical twin sister.
Yeah.
Shut up. Oh, wow. So that's how she got the job.
Yeah,
and we see this, and obviously we see this later on as well when the T-1000 takes the form of Sarah Connor, and we see them both in the same shot. It's not a split screen or anything like that. It's just Linda Hamilton has a twin sister.
They use that same exact trick for when the T-1000 takes the form of the cop.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hey, it's my lucky day."
Yeah.
And then turns around and sees himself. Do you know their names? The two twins.
Larry and Barry?
No, but you're not far off. Don Stanton and Dan Stanton.
But yeah, that's perfect. For a small role like that, I just need to be able to do a few lines. You just, hire identical twins. Perfect. But yeah, that scene, where the brain surgery scene it's an iconic scene now, I guess. But it's beautiful. It's classic cinema, a little bit of movie trickery. It's great.
It feels like an apology for the rubber face in the first film.
Yes,
honestly,
yes.
It feels like James Cameron felt like someone said something to him at a party, and he was like, "I'll show you.
We're gonna go all out." Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you notice that in that kind of final, when they're having a big battle and he shoots all the police officers, or he shoots all the police cars to scare them off or whatever, and he doesn't actually kill anyone. And it comes up on his point of view, I read, I think it says, human casualties 0.0.
Yeah, what's the
yeah, that was
zero?
interesting.
Yeah,
I know, I saw that. It was a weird.
it's a very much a yes or no situation.
That's if Danny DeVito had turned up for another Danny DeVito cameo in the project. And he goes 0.5. 0.6, let's be generous.
So yeah, Terminator 2, a classic of modern cinema, definitely. So do you want to rate it? Anything else you'd like to bring up?
To me, this is basically a perfect movie. This is about as close to perfect as I think film gets within this sort of genre, doing what it's doing. So no surprise from me. This is a 10 out of 10, and I mean this is one of my all-time favorite films. It's in my top 10 films of all time. I love it.
Wow, it's a bit strong for me, but okay. I do like the film, but like I say, I think there's a couple of misfires in there, as we've discussed. Nothing too major. I still enjoy it. I give it a very sturdy and solid 8.
I'm also an 8. I think I sort of agree with Saul almost. I think the bits of this film that I like are the best. One of the best films. One of my favorite films. But then there's just that 20 minutes that feel like they're not really necessary. The whole Miles Dyson bit, I just don't think that bit's necessary. And whilst it's not terrible, it just takes me out of the moment. And so I'm giving it an 8.
I don't disagree. I think that could have been Terminator 3, but I just love it. I don't mind that it's there. I love it.
Fair enough.
And you know what? One of the other things I love this film for, there's a real sense of finality. There's a real sense of, you know what? That's Terminator. We don't need any more. Where'd you go from here? Well, it's done.
Yeah, we've stopped Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So
everybody's happy.
Yeah. Should we mention a couple of the spin-offs?
Yeah, go on then.
All right. Terminator 2 Judgment Day, the video game. Yeah. One of the worst video games. Maybe the worst video game I've ever played in my life. 1 out of 10.
Can you give us more specifics on what is awful about it?
Oh, it's awful. And I should specify this is not the arcade game I'm talking about. I think that's quite a well-regarded one. But you basically play as the Terminator, and you start in a bar, and you have to walk right and punch, and you just punch everyone. But the controls are so fucking clunky. Like, I think you can jump, but there's no kind of... The jump animation is like the legs bend, and then he just lifts off the ground. It's like, it's shit. It's so bad. I hate it. On the other end of the spectrum, T2 3D Battle Across Time, the Terminator 2 ride. Is it Universal Studios? Have you ever done that?
No.
What the hell are you talking about, Saul? When you said spin-offs, I thought you meant television programs. You're talking about a roller coaster here.
Have you not been there? Have you not done it?
No, I'm fucking grown up.
Oh, it is astonishing. It's so fucking great. I think James Cameron was heavily involved. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton and Robert Patrick all filmed stuff, and Edward Furlong, they all filmed stuff, and then they seamlessly integrate it with like live action actors on the stage in front of you. And
this is a roller. What's happening? Is this a roller coaster? What are you talking about?
It's a show. You go in, you queue up, and you're queuing through Cyberdyne Systems, and they're like, "Oh, welcome to Cyberdyne. We're going to show you our latest whatever." And then you get shown off like the new models of robots, and your chairs are shaking, and you know they're spraying like mist in your face and whatever. And then like a big time, but you've got 3D glasses on. And then a big, like, 3D time ball appears in front of you. And you're like, wow, 3D effects from 1996. This is really cool. And then, like, an Arnold Schwarzenegger body double and a Linda Hamilton body double with, like, sunglasses and stuff on have, like, snuck in through a trapdoor behind the 3D thing. So it disappears and they're there, and you're like, oh my god! And then they like ride a motorbike around on stage, and then Robert Patrick tries to kill them, and they freeze him, and when they shatter him, you get sprayed with mist. It is honestly, it's the best example of one of these rides that I've ever been on. It's phenomenal.
Right, well, I accept it as the best example of one of these rides.
I don't know why you're turning your nose up. People like Universal Studios.
I've read that, yeah.
Oh, God. Have you ever been to Disneyland, Gareth?
No, but I went to Legoland once and the queues were terrible and I left.
Oh, no.
Not for me.
All right, well. And there is another spin-off, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, but fuck it. Guess what I'm going to say, guys?
That you're going to be back at some point?
Yeah. Next week, I'll be back.
Yeah, I will also be returning. Okay, yeah. Join us next week for the rest of the Terminator franchise. In the meantime, if you would like to help support the show, you can rate us on iTunes. That would be a good way of doing it. Or you can join our Facebook group, facebook.com/Diminishing Returns podcast. That's probably the easiest way to get any updates on what we're doing. And you can also message us on there if you want to talk to us directly. Build a little community. Tell us how you feel about the Terminator. So go there. That's a nice way to support the podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Get your ass to Mars.